or Mark Twain, the art of literature and poetry. Now, many of our ancestors homesteaded the prairies of Montana or the Dakotas. My grandfathers did. My grandfather up at north of Plentywood in the early 1900s, he didn't have electricity, he didn't have television, he didn't even have radio at that time. Now, sure, they got together and they played their instruments and they sang, and that's art. But one art they had available to them was literature and poetry, from the classics to the dime novel. Now, I claim this is the art of the prairies. In those days, people did read. Because, after all, what other entertainment was there night after night? I know I remember my grandparents, or my uncles and aunts on that grandparents' side, saying that their parents in the winter months especially would sit up at night by the lamplight and read into the wee hours of the morning, maybe going to bed at 2 o'clock. That might have been an extreme. They had a love for the art of the prairie literature. I think my mother inherited that. I remember as a child, my mother reading to us. Uncle Wiggily. I don't know if you ever remember, any of you had the pleasure, but Uncle Wiggily was an old rabbit. And then there was the Grimm fairy tales and so on. Then when we got a little bit older, at supper at night, she'd read a chapter or two in the book. And then night after night until the book was complete. I can remember Penrod and Sam, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and many others. And these are good memories. She also shared poetry, but she did this by recitation. She had quite a repertoire of poems that she had learned as a student and as a young adult. Some of them several stanzas long. She could still recite well into her 90s. I don't know, maybe some of you know, but my mother came to live with us after my dad passed away. She was 93. Her mind was sound, but her body wasn't. She was a reader. Her mainstay was the Bible. I know she'd read it through probably more than once. It sat right on the table beside her chair. It was always there. When my mom was there, it was Terry, my mom, and myself. We decided we would do some reading aloud. We'd get a book. Terry'd read a few pages. I'd read a few pages. And then my mom would read a few pages. And she really enjoyed that because we knew that whenever we didn't, she would say, well, when are we going to read? My brother sent a copy of Harry Potter. So we decided to read that. My mother had a little trouble with getting into the vocabulary of Hogwarts, but she finally did. But we never could get her to admit the genius of J.K. Rowling compared to the authors of her day. I know my mother also remembered what she read. One time, Terry and I went to Rapid City, South Dakota to a play, Les Miserables. It's a musical. It was taken from a book by Victor Hugo. So when we got back, my mother said, well, I read that book that was taken from when I was a sophomore in high school. And, you know, he was a French author, but it was translated into English. And I said, well, did everybody in your school have to read that book? He said, no, it was popular at the time, so my teacher asked me to read it and give a report to the class. Well, some 80 years later, she still remembered the plot. And if you recall, it's kind of a complicated plot. Then we went on, and one morning, we decided that we would read Longfellow's The Evangeline. That's a poem, and I don't know if you remember, it's about Acadians, French colonies in Canada, going in the 1750s and 60s. The British decided to relocate these people. So what they did is they come into the colony, in their community, they burn it down. They put the men in one ship and the women, children in the other, and they relocate them to what is now the coast of Louisiana. Well, the poem is fiction, but the situation wasn't. That actually happened. Evangeline is about her and her recent betrothed. We're separated. And the rest of the story, they try to find each other, near misses and so forth. It's one of those stories that by the time you end it, there isn't a dry eye in the room. After my mother passed away, we looked back at it, and this was one of our favorite times. I think Terry and I had both developed a love for the art of the prairie. When Terry went through some of my mother's things, she found a few poems that my mother had tucked away. One of them was written in her hand, but it was actually a copy of a poem that my wife's great aunt had written. That's about our son Mike when he was about 4 years old. He used to like to draw. The title of the poem is Man's Best Friend by Emma Feely. Wee Michael likes to paint a variety of things, like scenes and pets and goblins, and ferocious lions and kings. Today he paused a while for inspiration to begin. Then looking up at me announced with his enchanting grin, I guess I'll paint man's best friend. Yep, that is what I'll do. And reaching for the brush, he said, my mommy, that is you.
Oh.
Now, this poem was inspired by something Mike had said when he was visiting his grandparents, and Aunt Feely, Aunt Emma, was also visiting at the same time. He had said, man's best friend is his mom. When we were going through these things of my mother's, Terry and I both lamented the fact that maybe we didn't make the best use of her time. She lived with us until she passed away in her 101st year of her life. But then Terry found a little poem tucked away in a book. It's written by James Joseph Houghton. It says, live not in yesterday. Look back and you may sorrow. Live precisely for today and look forward to tomorrow. That seemed to be talking right at us. And it's not bad advice. And I think maybe it's the reason that my mom always seemed so at peace.
George, what good advice your mother had. I love that idea of reading out loud. I read Harry Potter out loud to my son Chris because it was about that time, and those are wonderful memories just to sit there and read, and you enjoy the stories too. So, our next speaker is following our theme today, which is gardening. So Nancy is we're going to learn something. This is a demonstration speech, and Nancy will show us how to create a garden container. Her speech is 5 to 7 minutes long, from Speaking to Inform Manual. So please help me welcome Nancy Court. You have some setup time you need? Yes. Okay, well, while she's doing that, I'll just share a few things about gardening then. Why do potatoes make good detectives? Because they keep their eyes peeled. What do you get when you divide the circumference of a pumpkin by the diameter?
Circumference by the diameter.
Pumpkin pie.
Oh, pumpkin pie.
And as you know, a weed that is, weeds grow in gardens, but a weed that is a plant that's mastered every survival skill except to grow in a row. But otherwise, and if you have a choice and you can't decide which is if this is a weed or a plant, if it comes out easy, obviously it's a good plant. If it's a weed, it's usually hard to pull out. So, what is a flower that everyone has on their face?
Tulips.
There you go. More time? I got one more. Yeah. Okay. All right. There were two friars that were having trouble paying off the belfry, and so they decided, gardening, opening a florist shop would be a good way for us to make some money. So everyone wanted to buy flowers from these men of God, and so their flower shop really flourished. And they were doing so well, but the florist shop across the street was not doing so well, so he asked them to close. And they said, no, we're going to continue. This is going good for us. We're paying off the belfry, So they refused. So a month later, the florist again begged them to close because he was having trouble feeding his family. Again, they refused. So then time went on, and the florist across the street hired a thug, town thug named Hugh McDermott, and asked him to use his pressure with these friars to get them to close their florist shop. Well, he did persuade these friars to close, and so there was no shop anymore. So this just goes to prove that once again, Hugh and only Hugh can prevent florist friars.
Oh my.
Nancy?
Thank you, Peggy. Toastmasters, guests. It's summertime. And what better way to express your feelings in summertime than to go outside? We all like to think sometimes maybe that we're farmers, but in reality we're probably just living in the city. But yet we still like that smell of the fresh flowers in the yards. We like to look at the different colors. We go past people's yards when we're walking. We think, oh wow, doesn't that look just fantastic? I wish I could do that in my yard. But sometimes we always don't know how to do things like that in our yard. How do we make a garden container look really nice? Well, for years I always wanted to do a garden container. My mom always had such beautiful flowers. She had a whole acre of land. She'd plant flowers out in front, and all the neighbors would go by and they'd say, oh, just look at all those flowers, they are just so pretty. How does she do that? She must be out there night and day, just with her garden and the flowers. Well, of course, she wasn't out there night and day with the garden because I know differently. But at the same time, she did know how to garden. So I just like to show you how to plant a garden container. Now, the very first thing you want to start when you're doing a garden container is have very good soil. You don't want to buy inexpensive soil. You want to buy name brand soil because that's what's going to help your garden grow. I have two different kinds of soil in here. One is a potting mix, and the other one is garden soil. You can kind of tell the difference between garden soil and the potting mix. If you look closely, one is a little darker, one is a little lighter. I always think the potting soil has like the things that come off of trees, those little seeds. That's what reminds me of the potting soil. And the garden soil, of course, always has maybe a like little tree branches or something in it that's a little bit more thicker. And the very first thing like I do when I try to mix about half and half in my garden container. And so I'm just going to kind of stir it around a little bit. And as you can see, I don't know what this is going to be, but we'll try. You might see a little kind of like a little stringy stuff here. That's the garden soil, or the topsoil. The next thing I like to usually do is get my pots in order of what would I like to actually plant. There's actually 3 different kinds of plants that they kind of suggest that you put in your container. The very first one is a thriller. By a thriller, they mean something that is tall. I always associate plants with people. Now, when I think of people, a thriller for me is somebody who's great big tall, who can reach the very top shelf. With me, I never can get quite that far, so that's a thriller to me. So I recognize things like thrillers. The next thing is the fillers. The fillers are the things that fill in. And there's always the people that always seem to just be able to fill in different spaces, are able to seem to come together and get jobs done. And then of course you have your spillers. The spillers are the things that go over your container. For me, a spiller is a person who's probably a little bit on the pudgy side, has a little bit of pot belly. So that's my way of thinking of flowers, containers, gardening. And you usually want to always put in your garden container 3 different types of flowers, at least if you can, or 3 different textures. You want different kinds of textures because the textures will make your garden container look very pretty. They always suggest to plant at least either 1, 3, 5, 7 in odd numbers. And why that is, nobody seems to know, but it seems like flower gardens always work better if you plant in an odd number. That is something that I never actually even knew myself, but when we went to different classes, Dwayne Silvernail said, you need to try this. This is going to work out much better when you do a flower container. Usually flower containers are pretty easy to get out if you actually go ahead and I usually just tip them upside down. Now, in our purchasing department of the hospital this year, we have various competitions going. In October, it's Materials Management Month. So we have to try to do something that interests other employees and interests our department also. Well, one of the things is we put together photo cubes and we kind of design them up and we're going to put them out in the hallway. But our next adventure is who can make the best garden container. So that's one of our challenges. And it has to be done by the end of this month. And we're going to plant all these out in the loading dock area. And then in October, hopefully, we'll see how everyone does and that we don't get any hail or really bad rainstorm or anything like that. When you're doing your garden container, always try to make sure that your plants aren't real mature, that they do have a little space that they can grow and develop. I'm just going to put this a little bit further down. I think it's going to have to go down further. I wasn't exactly sure how much soil to bring today, but I just brought a little soil. Hopefully this will do the trick. Now, as you can see, that I'm going to put at least 3 plants in because that's what Dwayne suggested. So I'm going to put my 3 plants in. And you can already, I don't know if Peggy can smell it or not, but I can really already smell how it smells. And you just try to rearrange your plants the best that you think that how they'll look. You know, I have gotten many magazines and books that will show different ways that you can plant your flower containers. And these are just some of them that I've actually just kept on hand. Sometimes I follow the instructions, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just go by what kind of colors I like to do best. But out in the loading dock area, it's extremely sunny out there. So I have to make sure that I plant plants that are really nice and sunny. And I always like to make sure to, you know, kind of look at these magazines because it does tell you the different types of soils that's available and you know how to plant a container. This is really kind of helpful. The very last thing that I try to do when I make my containers is I try to put in what is known as perlite. Perlite is like this little sandy stuff, and I actually put it on top of my stuff. This helps to kind of retain the moisture in the container. You just never know when we might have like a drought or we just don't get enough rain or something like that. So I just kind of put that all over and just kind of smooth it out a little bit so you don't see it as much, so some of it goes down into the plant. Now in this plant I probably would add a little bit more soil to it just because it just needs a little bit more oomph in here. But this is actually how I go ahead and I design my plants. Now these are not actually these these aren't actually thrillers, and these aren't actually spillers. But I just like the color combination, and I thought, I'm going to try something different just to see how it does work out. So I encourage all of you to go ahead and try a garden container just to see how it turns out for you, what you'd like, and just kind of experiment with it a little bit. Because these are always something fun to do, and you feel almost just like a farmer.
Well, I'm fraught with gardening fever now. That's wonderful. And I also have questions like, where do you get
The perlite you can get at any Walmart store, and it comes like in I'd say a 5-pound bag, but it really goes a long, long ways. And I even actually use it in my garden a little bit, just to retain some of that smell.
I've known the idea, but I've never heard of thrillers, fillers, and spillers, which is a great easy way to remember them. So, thank you, Nancy, for that. I guess now we moved on to cable topics, as everyone should complete their best speaker, but now we'll go on to
Okay, very good. So Peggy, I think we probably have time for 2 table topics at most. We've had 3 speeches, and spring starts March 21st, I'm told, and I'm not sure if we're actually into summer or still in spring, so I picked spring. And so who is up for table topics? Alan's got one. Okay. Virginia can do a table topic, I suppose. And Sheridan, do you want to try one maybe? Okay. So Sheridan, I'm going to let you, instead of having you pick a number from 1 to 9, I'm going to have you look at my whole list and pick one that you'd like to talk about. You can consult with Grandpa. And just give us a little talk on one of those.
Well, what happened is it kind of smoked that up. Now, anybody here that works in case care, you don't see this, and you'll often see it. Now that I told everybody, you'll see we're going to go to the grocery store. If you look around the grocery store, you'll see little ladies out there, not in the shopping cart, but laying over top of the shopping cart. So trying to open up this back to people car, and trying to get these people to open that space up a little bit. So you can kind of imagine here, like, then you open it, hopefully now here in a clinical setting, but
Okay, welcome, Sheridan.
I want to tell a story. I'm going to tell a story about what you can do in spring, because fall is now gone and all the leaves has fallen off and they disintegrated, and so flowers are starting to bloom. And last year I planted some sunflower seeds, and I grew a sunflower 7 feet tall, and I made sure to water it and take care of it. And in spring you can play outside, and you can see family, have a vacation to yourself. And I like planting flowers in spring and gardening in a community garden.
Wonderful job. Wonderful job indeed. Okay, and so let's think. Virginia can't time herself. We'll start with Alan. A number 1 to 9, please, Alan. 8. Very good. Springtime economy. Alan Rube's springtime economy.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, Sheridan. Springtime economy. I think probably the easiest way to welcome the spring is to fertilize your lawn, but don't fertilize it too much. Have a lot of perennials that grow and come back every year. You don't have to do anything with that. And probably if you have access to it, get a lamb or a horse or a cow and have it graze on your lawn, because the grass will be cut and you'll also be fertilized. So it's free fertilized. You gotta love that. And trees, you gotta have trees. They always come back every year. So I think of gardens and green grass, and those are the things that I think would make a good spring economy.
Fraught with fertilizer, that's the most original springtime economy example I could ever think of. And then I'll come time Virginia and sit back down over there when she's done and return control of the meeting to Peggy. So 1-9, Peggy. 1-9, Virginia.
Can't you choose one for me?
Can I choose one for you? Absolutely. I will choose number 7. Springtime in the Rockies. Virginia say, springtime in the Rockies.
Springtime in the Rockies. Well, I should probably really know that because we had lived in Denver. We had lived in Colorado, in Montrose, Colorado, and there were Rocky Mountains around us. But it was nice driving from Montrose on up. I can't remember the name of the place right now. But there you could see what's going on in the mountainous areas from one to the other place, and how it was always very pleasant to be there and enjoy it. So I think springtime in the Rockies was very much as like it was right down there in the valleys too, where we just had a good time and enjoyed what was going on. So I have not ever felt bad about springtime anywhere in my lifetime, no matter if it was in the mountains or in the valleys or in any part of the states, like in Michigan where I grew up. Springtime was always wonderful to be there. Just see how things just change from winter and how the leaves start coming back on the trees and the flowers grow and things like that. I enjoy springtime.
Peggy?
Thank you. Now we'll call upon our evaluators. For Jim's speech, it was Virginia.
Do you want me to come up there or stay
You're
here?
welcome to do it.
Stay right here. Okay, Jim's speech, and the survey said, it was kind of hard for me to get all of this down, but I know one of the ones he says was to incorporate West Glendive into Glendive. Well, I live out in West Glendive. No, not quite. I live almost there, because I live right at the corner of East Jefferson School Road and Jefferson School Road. Excuse me. But I went over this morning to visit with a friend over there because she asked me to read the Bible with her, certain things. And spent about an hour with her before I came over here today. And it's nice to visit people over there, I think. And to update job descriptions, how jobs should be done here in Glendive, whether it's in the parks or wherever they're doing it, helping with making the water better. Those job descriptions were nice that Jim shared with us. And how the city manager was to do his work, assist the mills to raise, I think he said 200,000 a month, was it? A year. I'll change that from month to year. A year. And then also, did the speaker address the negative and positive aspects of the proposal? Yes, he did. Some was to fix the streets, fix the parks, fix the parking lots around it. Some of those have been done. Was the proposal well organized and logical? Yes, I thought it was. How effective was the speaker's delivery? It was good about things that need to happen here in Glendive through the mayor and other members of, I put Congress of Glendive. So those things all need to happen through our meetings that they have with the mayor and others here in Glendive. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. And doing George's speech was evaluated by Alan, so I'll ask Alan to give his evaluation.
Thank you, Madam Postmaster. George's goal in this speech was to evoke emotion and using description and dialogue. You were not to use a script, and I would say that George, you did a fantastic job on this speech. What conditions did you experience at the emotions did you experience at the time of the story? I really kind of hark back to when my father was alive and in his 90s. You said that his mind was sharp, but the body wasn't. That brought things to my memory of my father. So that was very emotional for me. Then you mentioned something about no dry eye in the room. I believe it was someone that read a poem, I'm not sure, but just the thought of no dry eye in the room tugs at your heartstrings. How did the speaker use dialogue to evoke emotion? You recalled the memories of your family and the avenues of entertainment. The pretty much only entertainment was reading, and also your mom and others recited a lot of poems, read those out loud. Thought that was good. Did the story contain basic elements of setting, characters, plot, conflict, and action? The setting was the prairie, and that set the course for pretty much the whole speech. Characters were your uncles and your mom. Plot was the fact that they all loved reading, and kind of the conflict was you seemed to have some regrets not interacting with your mom more in her later years, and so that was kind of a conflict in that. Characters were well developed like that. Story was developed, no TV, radio, out in the middle of nowhere. Reading was your only entertainment. How did the speaker build a powerful climax? You found many poems in your mother's books that kind of built up to the ending. You recited a poem to not live in the past, but live for tomorrow. I thought that was an excellent ending and nice way to wrap up your speech. Thank you.
And I'm doing Nancy's speech, and it was a demonstration on how to create a garden container. The timing was perfect, so it was the audience interested? Obviously, it's the time to be planting, and so it was a perfect topic for the time of year, and I think you inspired us to get out there and do some planting. I never realized the importance of the soil, and I learned a lot about those two combinations, and even adding the soil water extender to that too. Was this the proper method for this? Way better than just coming up here and talking about how to plant. When we see it, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so it was much easier to see, how you were doing the depth. The only thing I would have loved to ask questions, because I saw you pulling on the bottom of the roots and wanted to ask you, the reason why or how much, and because obviously that was going to help it grow better. But probably if you were doing this as a demonstration on how to, most of the time, you do get to ask questions after, because that would be one suggestion. Now, I want to ask these questions to make sure. And it was very good to have samples of gardening books along so that people, if they were interested, then they could also extend those. So I thought you did an excellent job, great, timely topic, fraught with enthusiasm. Okay, that's on. Again, I encourage you to fill in your ballots and send those down to Virginia. You can pass this along. And while that's being done, I'm going to share a little thing on planting your garden. When you're planting your garden, you should plant 3 rows of peas. Peas of mind, peas of heart, and peas of soul. Plant 4 rows of squash. Squash gossip, squash indifference, squash grumbling, and squash selfishness. Plant 4 rows of lettuce. Let us be faithful. Let us be kind. Let us be obedient, and let us really love one another. No garden is complete without turnips. Turn up for meetings like Toastmasters. Turn up for service, and turn up to help one another. And then water freely with patience and cultivate with love. There's so much fruit in your garden because you reap what you sow. So to conclude, we must have time. Time for God, time for family, and time for friends. Okay, Virginia, have you had time to
I know what
results?
you're asking. It's fraught.
Yeah.
We got it all fraught it up. Our best evaluator they have down is Peggy. And our best speaker is George. And I'm sure everybody knows who the best tabletop person was.
Aha.
Sharon.
Congratulations, and do I need to turn the meeting back over to
No,
you?
you do not.
So we will conclude, and happy gardening, and hopefully we will grow Toastmasters as well.
And anybody can take these.
And anyone can take the seats.
I do have something not business, but the report.
Oh,
And
I'm sorry.
that's
Yes.
okay. I just want you to know that George won with the fewest number, followed by Virginia, who was only slightly. So George is first for least odds, second least odds, and then a tie, which is why I want to give the report. Alan and Peggy tied for third least odds.
It looks like there's a meeting in here at 1, so we better scamper out.
That was between Peggy and
Alan.
Alan. Okay. Got it. Hey, thanks for that.
Thank you for coming, Sharon.
Can I scan this?
It's yours. Here, I'll give you a better copy.
No, this is fine. I'll just scan it and put it into the bin.
Here's one that's.
Either way. Okay, yeah, get into the minutes.
Here.
You want one of the copies back?
Maybe this one would be.
Either way will work. Thank you. Let's see, somebody, you got my book. Shut this off.